Paradox really lies at the very heart of reality, at least in a manner of speaking, because from reality's point of view, I don't think reality would really use a word like paradox, because reality is sort of an all-encompassing view, and it's only when that view interacts with the human intellect that on an intellectual level or a mental level, we start to notice paradoxes, which means we start to notice that two opposing things are simultaneously true without causing any kind of contradiction or conflict. And if you think about it, this is a pretty amazing thing, that two totally opposing things or views can be true, both can be equally true at the same time, with no contradiction at all. And that's, of course, the challenge of engaging in paradox. And so anytime we really go into the deeper experience or the deeper revelations of reality, we'll always run into paradox. Now, as I said, reality transcends the experience of paradox simply because it's just so what it is that we only see paradox when we see it through the lens of the mind, when the mind starts to participate. And yet we all do have minds, and we all do have intellects. And I think we've all seen certain paradoxes in our life. And, there's a point where when we're not really more grounded in some of the realities of existence, that we don't like paradox, that there's something in the mind that will kind of resist paradox, as if, because the mind exists in a dualistic state. It's often says it's either like this or it's like this. It's this way or it's that way. And yet that's not how reality behaves at any level, even down to the sort of subatomic level where particles are, on one sense, particles, and in another sense, they're waves, almost like not ultimately necessarily waves of energy, they're just kind of waves. And so at the ultimate level of matter, even there we run into this paradox of, is it a particle or is it a wave? Is it something, or is it, in a manner of speaking anyway, nothing? And at least at that level of even physical reality, so physics would tell us, the answer to which is it is yes. Yes, it's both a particle and a wave simultaneously. And there's, in this thing that's both a particle and the wave, its potential can be collapsed into being either one at any moment in time. It can be collapsed simply through the mere act of observation. You can collapse all the possibilities, and it will either manifest as one event or another event. But this paradox doesn't sort of rule the day in the terms of material reality, or the reality that's kind of uncovered in particle physics. It also just rules the everyday reality. It's part of our own spiritual realization too. And this may not initially be easy to see, because part of what any deep or profound waking up to reality shows us is, in one sense, it's a paradox right from the beginning. We see that our own experience of our own being is, in the deep sense of things, nothing at all. So to encounter experientially our own nothingness is to encounter one one part of the pole of this paradox of nothing and something. And our revelation, our deepest inner experience of our own being will show us also that we are, in a sense, nothing. And we can actually experience that, because I'm not talking from a philosophical context now. It's an experiential context, that we can actually experience ourselves to be nothing. And we can also experience ourselves to be everything. Now, how can I be nothing and absolutely everything at the same time? For the mind, this is quite a conundrum, because on an intellectual level, on a conceptual level, you can't put paradoxes together. You can't jam one concept into another and then, come up with a third concept, because all ideas are basically kind of, because the nature of language, they're dualistic. We have hot or cold, but we have no word for something that's simultaneously hot and cold. What's the word for that, It would almost have to be a hyphenated word, or the word for being nothing and being everything. There's no word for that. You could hyphen those words so it would be nothing, everything, but it even gets more profound than that. That on the deeper level of revelation, we are nothing, infinitely nothing, also infinitely everything, and also a particular human being. And all these is our experience. Now, on the way to realizing the fullness of that experience, we often go from one to the other. So we go from the experience of being a particular human being or an ego, and all of a sudden we have a revelation of being nothing. And the mind or the ego is simply something that arises and passes away within the nothingness that we are. Of course, we also find that nothingness is very aware or very conscious, to such an extent that we might even end up calling that nothingness awareness, or we might end up calling it consciousness. However, no matter what we call it, I think it's very important that we always realize that nothing is the name that we ascribe to it. That the reality of anything will always far outshadow our description of the thing itself. And so, like I said, often in our own inner revelation, when we asked, who am I? Initially, we often awaken to our nothingness or no-thingness or awareness. But also, in a deeper sense, if that revelation is even deeper and more profound, our sense of self, you could say, becomes universalized. So we see what we would call the world and all the things in the world, and everything has the sense and the feel of ourself. And if you never experienced that, never seen the world through those eyes, it might seem kind of fanciful, but it's very similar to, like, when you look in a mirror and in our everyday life, and you look at your face and something recognizes, oh, that's me. There I am. Imagine that you had that same feeling, that same sense of the whole entire world of objects, the whole entire universe. That when you looked up in the sky, it was almost as if the sky was looking at itself, and so on and so on and so on. So this is, I think, really what unity really means, is we see that everything is of the nature of our own being.